Helpful salespeople. What? The counter space for unnecessary.
Before streaming and algorithmic playlists, the music industry of the 1980s had one mission: go global or die trying. And to do it, labels unleashed some of the flashiest, wildest, and most ridiculous marketing stunts you've never heard of. From album covers that changed depending on the country, or artists re-recording entire LPs in new languages, to picture discs shaped like logos, neon vinyl, and Japanese-only bonus tracks, if it could grab attention overseas, somebody pressed it, packaged it, and slapped a hologram sticker on it. Labels were locked in an international arms race. Region-exclusive remixes, foreign-language re-recordings, alternate art so wild that it looked like a different album, glow-in-the-dark vinyls, and bundles that made albums feel like collector's toys. In the 1980s, record labels found ways to make their artists' music transform to fit each market. But in the years before these global marketing stunts became standard label strategy, one artist was already doing something unusually ambitious. Peter Gabriel wasn't the first musician to record in another language, but he was one of the very first English-language rock artists to take the idea seriously enough to rebuild entire albums, not just translate a single or two. He introduced into his songs new vocals, new phrasing, new mixes, new sequencing, and a level of care that most artists wouldn't touch for decades. Throughout his career with Genesis, Peter Gabriel felt like he was fighting to get his creative input into the music. He started out his work with the band as solely the vocalist, with other members co-writing lyrics alongside him. But he got bored of standing around during the band's long instrumental sections. So he picked up other instruments like the flute, tambourine, accordion, and percussion to fill in the time. What he really wanted to do was play the keyboards, but it was forbidden by the band's keys player Tony Banks. He kept fighting for it, but the only chance he got to play them was on I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, only for his parts to ultimately be left out of the mix. Genesis's final album with Peter Gabriel, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, finally had lyrics written entirely by himself, but tensions over musical differences and interpersonal issues within the band pushed Gabriel to leave the following year. Even though his solo career would become best known for his entrance into pop music, Gabriel hadn't given up his progressive spirit, and he continued, and still continues, to make genre-pushing and pretty strange choices with his music, like releasing 2 albums entirely in German. Peter Gabriel's first solo album was the self-titled Peter Gabriel, also known as Car, after the image by Hypnosis on the cover. The album produced the hit single Salisbury Hill, which was an effective bridge between Gabriel's prog rock background and his desire to find a wider audience. Though the song sounds simple on the surface, with a singable melody and toe-tappable rhythm, it leans heavily on its 7/4 time signature and a sonic landscape that deepens with each new section as more and more instruments are layered in. His second album, Peter Gabriel, was a little less well-received, but it still charted in the UK and US. That one is usually known as Scratch, again for the cover. It has some decent tracks on it, like Mother of Violence, White Shadow, and the weird and underappreciated Animal Magic, but it definitely has the marks of an artist who isn't sure about what they want to do with their sound. On the lengthy 4-month tour for the album, Gabriel found himself searching artistically. He and the rest of the band shaved their heads, and he decided that the next album would have no cymbals on the drum tracks. The tour took them all across North America and Europe, to France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, and beyond. But as he performed in all these countries, a thought crossed his head: why shouldn't everyone be able to sing his songs in their own languages? He tried out the idea with a reworked version of a lesser-known Christmas song, Me and My Teddy Bear, which was written by J. Fred Coots and previously recorded by Roy Rogers. He cleverly changed the words to reflect his new stage persona with the profound lyrics, Me and my teddy bear got no hair and we don't care. Gabriel performed the song in French and German in addition to English, and said that he felt that the audience was excited about the gesture. These performances settled the matter, and he decided the next album would be released in as many languages as he could manage. Releasing a song in multiple languages wasn't unheard of before Gabriel came up with the idea. A year before, David Bowie released the German version of Heroes, Helden, and before either of them, the Beatles released German versions of I Wanna Hold Your Hand and She Loves You, and recorded some others that weren't released until much later. Gabriel went to record companies with the idea, hoping to secure deals to release the album with labels in Japan, South America, Portugal, Italy, and Spain, but he was met with disappointment when every label shot down the idea, except for one. A German record company took him up on the offer, and he went about reworking the songs for his upcoming third album, Peter Gabriel, in German. For his reworkings, Gabriel did not want to simply translate the songs word for word and sing them exactly as he would in the English version, but he didn't really know how to speak German, so he hired Horst Königstein to join the project and help him translate the songs. Horst was a director, scriptwriter, and producer of documentaries for NDR Television, a public TV broadcaster in Hamburg. He came onto the project enthusiastically and helped Gabriel rework the lyrics and vocal lines into lines that were just as meaningful in German as they were in English. And the lyrics weren't the only thing that changed for the album. Ein Deutsches Album went through its reimagining after Peter Gabriel 3, which is usually called Melt, had already been completed, and so the music is almost a refinement of the English version. Some tracks are longer, such as the additional 10 seconds added onto the German version of Intruder, where a haunting repetition of the word Ein Dringling is whispered, or the additional 90 seconds and new vocal lines tagged onto Biko. There are several small differences in the mix throughout the album, and several other songs with different run times. But of course the biggest difference is the entirely reworked vocal lines. The melodies of many of the tracks had to be altered, sometimes slightly and sometimes drastically, to accommodate different syllable counts and where the consonants and vowels occurred across the melodies. On my first listen to the German version of Melt, I was surprised to find that, as a whole, Gabriel seems to have performed even better in German than his native language. For example, the opening couple minutes of Family Snapshot, which is one of my favorite Gabriel solo songs, have a sharper sound in German, cutting through the mix in a way that lets the reverb create more of a chamber effect and allows the chorus effect to take over much more than the English version. It makes Gabriel's vocal lines there sound huge, to an operatic effect by the time his vocal doubles come in. In the German version of the line "shooting into the light," he doesn't move the vowel placement through the tone as much, and it feels more solid, which is something that always bothered me a little about the English version.
I'm shooting into the light. Ich ziele in das Licht.
His characteristic yips and yodels are still there, but found in different places, which is interesting as someone familiar with the English version of the album, but also done with more abandon and dramaticism in German. The only part I don't care for is the electric-driven guitar section of the song around 2 minutes in. It's less rhythmic in German, and it loses some energy. Differences like these can be found throughout the album, and make for an interesting listen for a Peter Gabriel nerd. Besides the changes that are mandated by the translation, there is a sense of freedom and playfulness to the German vocal lines, which Gabriel noted himself in the liner notes for Ein Deutsches Album. I believe that my difficulties with language make it possible for me to approach the whole with a certain impartiality and naivety. This journey was particularly interesting because I was able to use language as a sound repertoire, sounds as a means for expression and not just meaning. For example, I could take language cliches like Ordnung or alarm and sing them naively. Both versions of the album have the same legendary performances from Robert Fripp, Tony Levin, and even Phil Collins on a few songs, where he would first experiment with the gated reverb drum sound that would become iconic of the 1980s, and would notably be used in his own song In the Air Tonight. In Germany, the English version of Melt charted at number 9, but the German version only got to 65, and quickly fell from the charts long before the English version. Still, it was successful enough that Peter Gabriel wanted to try it again on his next album, and he wanted to do it bigger. Unfortunately, when it came time to release his next album called Peter Gabriel or Security, he was met with the same rejection from worldwide labels, with only the German record company being interested in the idea. The German version of Security is much more interesting overall than the previous album. The songs were altered more drastically than the songs from Melt, and more care was taken to ensure that the arrangements and mixes fit the reworked songs. Despite what the Genesis News Network website says about the album, differences are found in the instrumentation on various songs, such as the German version of I Have the Touch, cleverly titled Contact, to work with the English better than Ich hab das Gefühl would have. Little touches like the break around 45 seconds in demonstrate this, with the German version having a measure of silence, while the English version continues the beat with the electronic bass drum, before the vocals re-enter with a chorus of gang vocals, following the line about parties, a line which doesn't exist in the English version, but it works perfectly with the concept of the song. Several aspects of the German version work better than the English, but the repetition of contact instead of the English version's more haunting wanting contact in the chorus is an unfortunate miss. Either way, for me, the definitive version of the song is the 1983 remix that's on Shaking the Tree. The hit single from the album, Shock the Monkey, has less instrumental differences between the versions, but the vocal differences are distinct. I wouldn't say that the German version is necessarily better, but I like what he pulls off with the vocal effects a lot. There are times where the wash of reverb completely dries up, only for the vocal lines to suddenly be rejoined by a chorus of harsh vocals that have an impressively dense yet clear reverb tail following them. The same thing almost happens in the English version, but it's so subtle that I hadn't noticed until I compared the two. He also draws out the sh when he repeats the word shock, I guess to emphasize the SCH in the German word. That sounds a little strange, and I think I prefer the reverse reverb sound in the English version. There are differences throughout the albums, and it's worth taking a listen to yourself. Unfortunately, few people thought so at the time, and even though the two versions were released simultaneously, the German version failed to chart anywhere in the world, while the English version topped the charts worldwide. It appears that the skeptical record companies were right, and it just wasn't a very marketable idea. Listening through these albums, I kept wishing that Peter Gabriel would have been able to see his original idea through. How interesting would it be to listen to the differences produced by taking the same ideas and reinterpreting them through a dozen different languages? As a high-minded artistic idea, it's awesome. In my video on the band Magma, I talked about how hearing music in a language that you don't speak forces you to think about different things as you listen. For me, having the nuances of a singer's voice brought out by not being able to think about the meaning of the lyrics is really interesting. And in a singer with a voice as nuanced as Peter Gabriel's, it's incredible to find that he made something like these two albums. A large part of Gabriel's original vision for the project was to reflect on language as a barrier between people, and to try and find a way to break that barrier down. But I honestly think he was a little off the mark. In the end, Germans preferred the English version. Music is something that already transcends the language barrier, and you could go to a concert in any country and sing the same lyrics together, regardless of whether or not somebody really speaks the language that the song is in. If Peter Gabriel was working on this project today, it's more likely that it would have been completed. Making music is far cheaper now, and there are all kinds of translation tools to make the process of rendering the lyrics into different languages easier. You wouldn't even need to find a record company from each country to work with. You could just release the various versions digitally. There are plenty of albums now that are performed in two languages. Recent ones I can think of are Opus in Cauda Veneum or Ragnar Zolberg's several part English, part Icelandic albums. But I haven't heard of a project on the scale that Gabriel planned. I imagine that someone will try to do this using AI at some point, but doing that kind of thing would be a shallow imitation of the kind of reinterpretation that was pulled off with Melt and Security. An artist's touch at not only translating and performing the songs, but reinterpreting them is something that could only really be done by the musician themselves. And most probably aren't crazy enough to try it. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Is It Prog? This is one I've been thinking about for a long time. Thanks to the Patreon members, John Ridgway, Leonardo Moya, Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a picked Aleksandar Novakovic, James Berlyoung, Muhd Faiq, Toad, Yvan Lacroix, Theirry Drigneux, Chris Jeffrey, This Is a Sword, Anders Engstrom, Joey Burgio, Slugman, Eric and Sheri Carbenia, and Evan Satinsky. If you'd like to join us over there, you get early access to new videos and a few extra pieces of content, and it really helps out the channel, which regularly gets demonetized since I like to put musical examples in the videos. I don't post that often, so you only get charged when there's a new video. Feel free to give me some video ideas down in the comments, and have a nice day or year or however long it is till I see you again.